Okay, so a lot of people have been complaining online, also to me, about their cost of water and sewer. Somehow, we have been told that we need to conserve water, and we've been doing it. We've been doing this for years. We have all these shiny new faucets and toilets and on demand for hot water and shower heads, you name it, we have it. We're living in 2026. And ultimately, statistically, people in general are using less water. We are using less water, but somehow your bills continuously go up. And if you were wondering just how old and screwed up some of our infrastructure here in Massachusetts is, all you have to do is look at what happened in Haverhill over the summer. There was a massive 42-inch sewer line that ended up breaking in two places that sent untreated sewage into the Merrimack River. This just so happened on and during the 4th of July when people were traveling to Massachusetts and vacationing here, if you could believe it. And some of them may have even been brave enough to swim in literal feces. That's right. So congratulations. Happy Independence Day, basically. What a great surprise. What a great treat, right? Just for the 4th of July. And this is why I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to understand what was happening with the water and sewer systems and how something like this is still not necessarily a permanent fix. So the reason that your water bills keep on increasing is because, just like energy, we are not just paying for the water that we use. We are paying for decades of aging infrastructure underneath our feet. You're also paying for the sewer system. You're also paying for the treatment plants, the repairs, the debt, the testing, the regulations, the pumps, the electricity for the pumps, and the giant infrastructure projects that sometime somebody ends up having to pay for. And guess who is standing, of course, at the end of that line every single time that has to hold the check? It's us. It's the ratepayers. That's the problem. Take Swampscott, however it's pronounced, Swampscott. I don't even know anymore at this point. Everybody that I talk to from there pronounces it differently, okay? The only thing that I know about Swampscott is that they have great pizza, and this is not sponsored, but Volocraft is one of my favorite pizzas inside of Massachusetts. If you haven't checked them out, go and do it. Here's the way that this goes, though. Back in fiscal year of 2025, there was a reduced water consumption that actually helped this town. Their MWRA water assessment ended up dropping the water budget, and it fell to about roughly 5.1%, right? Or $225,000 plus. On the other side, which is the sewer, they reduced consumption of that as well, which helped lower the Lynn sewer assessment, which ended up contributing around $68,000 in total reductions. So the conservation side ended up working. And I want to be clear about this because I don't want somebody to make a stupid argument in the comments or something. Using less water somehow doesn't magically make the wholesale bill higher, because it didn't. The town ended up saving money at this point. But then what had happened is in fiscal year 2026, the budget ended up going up about 3.7%, or roughly $161,000. The major reason for this, at least that was identified from the town, at least from what I was reading, was that debt service for water main replacements. And we'll talk about debt service in a little bit here. Then on the sewer side, so again, if you're from Swampscott, this is what it's about. The sewer side went up about 7.1%, or roughly around $216,000. Even though you are basically consuming less water, it doesn't necessarily correlate to having less bills. So Massachusetts, they basically admitted that this is how the system works. The state's own water pricing guidance talks about water conservation revenue loss conundrum. And the other phrase that they coined was fixed cost variable revenue conundrum, which are very catchy names. Maybe somebody ended up getting a bonus or like a pension or something for that. But the important part of it is this. Massachusetts says that 90% or more of the water supplier's short-term costs can be fixed. So think about this like a normal person. What does that mean, right? It means that if you use 20% less water, the town doesn't suddenly need 20% fewer pipes. They're not selling 1/5 of the off of the like treatment plant or something on Facebook Marketplace. You see what I'm saying? But where the story gets a little bit deeper and a little bit bigger is that Massachusetts, we're not very good at managing our infrastructure. Just look at our roads. I've been on dirt roads that are better than some main streets in Massachusetts. You know exactly what I'm talking about here, right? We have old sewer lines. We still have lead pipes. We still have older wastewater plants. And it's a problem, right? It's a huge problem. Some of replacing this is absolutely necessary. I'm not going to argue that we should, drink lead because the budget is tight. Okay, that would be absolutely insane. But the question is, who inevitably pays for it, okay? Back in 2025, this is a big one. The Healey administration announced roughly around a $1.24 billion in water and wastewater project financing eligibility. And when you hear a number like that in a press release, it sounds fantastic, right? $1 billion for clean water, great, the problem is solved. Except financing is not the same thing as free money. We're not getting this money for free. So some of it may have been grants or principal forgiveness, and some projects I was reading do get favorable rates in regards to financing these things, and that inevitably does help. But a huge portion of the bill is still borrowed. We're still borrowing that money to make these repairs. And then inevitably, the town ends up getting the project, the engineers get done, the contractors get paid, the pipes go in the ground, and the municipality is still sitting there with principal and sometimes with interest if the rates are to shit, right? And the water or the sewer enterprise that funds that has to pay a balance. So where does that money come from? It comes from your bill. It comes from your bill. And that's part of this machine. Nobody has to be like essentially stealing your money. They don't have to, because they can build this affordability problem with these legal constraints and these legal contracts for necessary projects that are effectively subsidized by the ratepayers. So that's really what's going on here. It doesn't require some guy in a dark room with a bag of cash. Our systems here were designed so that we can get screwed in broad daylight, right? They don't need to do anything in the shadows in Massachusetts, although I'm sure that there's a lot of nonsense that goes on. So after all this, you start to see what the limits are when you are using this type of financial modeling, right? Massachusetts ran a 0% loan program for certain projects, and specifically for PFAS. Now, if you're asking me what that acronym like spells out exactly, for the life of me, I can't pronounce it, okay? All you need to know is that it's in regards to forever chemicals in the water. So moving forward, that's what we'll use, right? Now, 0% loans, they do sound like a good idea because the treatment for forever chemicals is expensive, and forever is in the word. Now, I don't know if it'll ever be to the point where it's no longer forever, but it seems like it's forever. And in 2026, within the state documents that I have here on my screen that I was looking at, basically what happened, let me minimize some of them. Basically what happened is that the available funding, we ended up funding what we could actually afford. The trust committed around $731 million in forever chemical project financing, with an estimate of $189 million of cost to the state's contract assistance resources. So for 2026 and the Forever Chemicals project, the state said it would no longer generally offer that 0% rate. So what happens when, look at it this way, when you are borrowing money at a 0% rate, what happens when cheap borrowing becomes more expensive? The projects are not going to just disappear overnight. The pipes will still need to be replaced. They're not going to fix themselves, right? The treatment is still going to be required, and the chemicals that are in the water, they're not just evaporating. So somebody has to absorb the extra financing costs. And eventually, unless somebody steps in, like the state for that matter, that pressure works its way towards the ratepayers, which is us. And Massachusetts already knows any level of debt servicing inevitably is going to raise sewer bills. They know this. There's literally a state program called this is an important one too. It's called the Commonwealth Sewer Rate Relief Fund. I realize I might be talking in, some complex terminology here because I'm kind of in the weeds, but this is really big. This is an important one. The purpose of this, the Commonwealth Sewer Rate Relief Fund, its purpose is to mitigate sewer rate increases that are caused by qualifying debt service. Do you want to know how much money Massachusetts has put into that fund for fiscal year 2026? It's $1.5 million, with an M, million dollars. That's statewide. So look at it this way. The state has a water infrastructure financing system that is operating at a $1 billion scale, while the dedicated program that's meant to protect people from the debt service effect gets $1.5 million. And now I know these are not coming out of the same pot of money. Okay, I realize that. I understand that. One finances the infrastructure, right? That's 100% true. The other provides sewer rate relief. But that's exactly the point. It's a $1 billion financing machine with a $1.5 million Band-Aid taped to the side of it. Now, you might be wondering why that amount is so damn low. I'm still trying to figure that out. And if anybody at the water or sewer companies want to message me, that's all fine and dandy. Here's how it goes. Her Excellence, Governor Healey, recommended $0. She wanted $0 for the sewer rate relief in fiscal year of 24. Then you want to know what happened? The legislature put in $1.5 million. She vetoed the legislature and they overrode her. So meaning it went on in 2024. Then in 2025, the exact same thing happened. $0 from Healey, $1.5 million from the legislature, vetoed. But this time, there was no override. So the exact amount was actually, believe it or not, $0. And in fiscal year 2026, Healey recommended, you guessed it, $0 again. The legislature, one more time, put $1.5 million. She vetoed it again, and they overrode her. So we have $1.5 million for 2026. So again, do the math here. 3 years, 3 zeros from Healey. The Captain Planet of Massachusetts. At what point am I allowed to ask whether ratepayer relief is actually a priority in Massachusetts? Because when you start to look at energy and you start to look at water and you start to look at sewer, it seems like the ratepayers are always last on the totem pole. That's really my problem here. Because, in Massachusetts, we hear nonstop about affordability. They don't fix the affordability problem. They campaign on fixing the affordability problem. Everyone in Massachusetts government apparently wakes up thinking about affordability, right? It has to be exhausting talking about affordability while never actually delivering affordability. Do you see what I'm saying? Because when there is a fund specifically designed to reduce sewer rates, let's say, and which would inevitably maybe back off of some of the pressure from having to pay the infrastructure debt, the governor keeps on recommending nothing. And this isn't new for Maura Healey, by the way. This has been going on for multiple years across multiple governors in Massachusetts. So it's not her fault. But again, this is something where she is carrying that torch forward. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why. This is a longer running state philosophy when it comes to affordability. And that's actually my problem with this, because Beacon Hill has accepted this idea that for years, the water and sewer systems should increasingly recover their own true costs through rates, through different enterprise funds, and from local borrowing. Now, there is logic to this, don't get me wrong. The people using meaning the people that are using the system should inevitably have to pay for that system. We pay for the roads that are again, they're worse than dirt roads, but you see where I'm going with this. The infrastructure here is screwed. So, if Massachusetts or the federal government, look at it this way. If we need something and it's a major, major project, we're screwed. Okay. If Massachusetts or the federal government decides, you know what, this is like what happened in Haverhill. This is a public health concern, right? And that project ends up costing, tens of millions of dollars. At what point does it stop being a local water customer problem and become a broader public infrastructure responsibility? That's the core of what I want to talk about. That's what I am talking about here. We're like one bad rainstorm away from another fecal catastrophe, yet has anybody even done any? I know that they patched that sewer line in Haverhill, but I think it's going to cost at a bare minimum $10 million and exceeding up to $50 million. Where the hell is that money going to come from? They're probably going to have I would assume they're probably going to have an override or something like that. So after looking at all these things and trying to figure out how this shit works, I went and looked at other states. I looked at New York. I looked at New Jersey. I looked at a couple states. Now, New York, believe it or not, okay, now this is the state, not the city. The city, you'd basically be screwed. Let's just call it what it is. But New York has used some sort of water quality and infrastructure investment between grants and between basically framing it so that they're trying to keep the costs off of the local ratepayers. Now, I don't live in New York. I don't know what the cost of sewer or water is there, but I'm willing to bet that the residents, based on some of the investments that they've made, I'm sure that in terms of the investment portion, which I don't even know if you could actually see on your bill, I bet the investment portion is less. So, take it from there. Now, Massachusetts, in theory, could put more grant money ahead of debt. It could meaningfully fund the sewer rate relief instead of treating it just like $1.5 million that Beacon Hill's looking in the couch cushions for, right? They could do something about this is what I'm trying to say. And this is why I wanted to make this video. So you guys had some arsenal to kind of, talk about this in a meaningful way, because it's only going to get worse. The infrastructure is not necessarily getting better. And when it does get better, we are paying for it. Right? So I think that they need to do something here. There's a lot of people that are on, they already have some subsidies in regards to energy. And I'm not against all subsidies, guys, okay? I understand some people that are on fixed incomes need help. Maybe we could do something if we get a new governor. Maybe we could do something for the communities and the people that are actually struggling, pay their water and sewer bills. Because right now, there's a lot of people here, they're opening up their damn bills and they're thinking, how the hell did I use less water and less sewer, but it's more than I spent last year? It doesn't make well, now you know why it makes sense, right? Now you know. And it seems like Massachusetts has built this system, and they're very good at getting those projects borrowed and financed, but they're not nearly as aggressive as protecting the ratepayer at the end of that chain, because the ratepayer is the one that inevitably has to fork up the money to pay for their projects. That's what's going on. And really, if Beacon Hill, look at it this way, if Beacon Hill believes that these projects are necessary for public health and for the environment, then I think that Beacon Hill needs to have some kind of adult conversation about who should actually pay for them, because again, it is only going to continually get worse. They are going to continue to tell people to conserve while handing their own town another loan and then acting confused when the bill shows up. That's not some sort of affordable policy. It's not affordability as we know it. It's a payment plan, and the ratepayer is the plan. That's what's going on. The same exact thing is happening with energy. The same exact thing is happening with energy. And I think more people need to talk about this. It's not as extreme as energy, because as you know, we're trying to, plug extension cords into the sun or something. It's not as extreme as energy. But when you combine the affordability crisis that is happening inside of Massachusetts, this is getting into what I talked about is really getting into the nitty-gritty details of why we have an affordability crisis. So if I could figure out why we have an affordability crisis, you sure as shit know that the legislature knows, and they also know the mechanisms and the levers to pull to make it more affordable for the ratepayer. But it seems like these people are more interested in financing pet projects and financing all of this other ridiculous stuff and creating all these ridiculous committees and spending money here and spending money there, rather than either A, sending more money back to the towns that need it, or B, helping with the general quality of the infrastructure. Realistically, I think the federal government should have a scale, right? And if your infrastructure is ranked from A to F, and if you cross a certain threshold for your infrastructure, meaning that, the ratepayers have already been extended to the point of death, right? Like, think of a rubber band that you stretch out and it eventually snaps. Then what needs to happen is they need to figure out ways to allocate more money out of our bloated budget towards these towns so that they could actually get this stuff fixed. That's realistically what should happen. Why are we? Because you're effectively paying double, right? You're paying for it within your towns, and you're also paying an extreme amount of money to the legislature in terms of taxes. So, no matter what way you try to shake it, you're getting screwed. But at the very least, they should, meaning the Beacon Hill, should be contributing more money so that we don't continuously have to have these problems. Think about the roads. Think about the bridges. Think about the energy costs. Now think about the cost of water and sewer. We can't have all of these things compounding on top of each other without an actual plan to address it. Anybody that is running for governor, and I know I'm not, I'm just giving some of my opinions here, but people need to look at this with a fine-tooth comb, okay? We're in 2026. The data is out there. They need to figure out a way to take money from one area that might be levels of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they need to figure out how to put it into the other area, which is going towards the towns. I talk very often about the amount of money that these towns receive, and it's just not enough. Whether it's Chapter 70, Chapter 90, all of these things combined, they all lead down the same path, where more towns are going to be looking for overrides. I've been talking about this for years. More towns will continue to look for overrides, and guess what's going to happen? There's going to be more money coming out of the same small pool that a majority of people within these towns can't afford. Again, you are one rainstorm away in Haverhill from having another disaster happen. And I don't want to see that happen. Nobody should make a vacation inside of Massachusetts, come to the beaches up in Marblehead or Gloucester or whatever, and then find out after spending $600 a night on an Airbnb that's waterfront, or even more than that for that matter, that they can't go swimming. You see what I'm saying? It's a problem. It's a problem. That's it. Sorry, I went on and that was a pretty long rant. I apologize, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that you're screwed either way. You're screwed either way. Of course, you're going to pay more the more you use, but you're also still going to pay more because we are financing all of this. That's the way it goes.